What you needed, what you wanted, was something simple. LG beat the simplicity drum harder than any other one at its G3 announcement, but can the resulting smartphone compete in a complex world? A world in which tablet phone hybrids, Apple Beats deals, and a Windows phone from the guy who fired Steve Jobs are all, improbably, real things. We'll talk about all of that on episode 098 of the Pocketnow Weekly, the once-a-week audio podcast where we talk smartphones, tablets, wearables, and other gadgets you dreamed of owning when you were young. From Boston, Massachusetts, I'm your host, Michael Fisher. To my right, and just about 300 miles away, is Chief News Editor Stephen Shank. Good morning to you.
Good morning. I can tell you're facing south from that.
That's exactly right. Actually, I think I am, which is creepy. And joining us from over the border of our northern neighbor, Daniel Bader of MobileSyrup. Daniel, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. I had a note to myself that I didn't write down, and it's crucial, kids. Remember, write down the notes to yourself, because that's the only way you'll remember them. Did I pronounce your last name correctly, Daniel?
You sure did.
With the long
Nobody
A.
else does.
Hey, what do people call you, Bader?
It's always Bader.
Oh,
Really?
wow.
Yeah.
Well,
I even tell them
right.
Darth, and then they figure it out from there. But everybody who tries it always fails initially.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. All right. I'm glad I'm one of the few in the proud.
We have Diedrich Bader from Drew Carey and whatnot.
Oh yeah,
Everyone
there you
says
go.
that right.
Oh, yes.
I knew
That's
his brother
goofball.
was
Hey,
dean of
Peter,
something. College.
Watch out for your cornhole, bud. That guy's a frickin' treasure.
Oh,
What I was for some reason I also just my mind just jumped to Napoleon Dynamite, but I think that is unrelated. He was in that.
Yeah, he was
the karate
the
guy.
judo guy. Yeah.
You think anybody wants a roundhouse kick to the face while wearing these? Forget about it. Anyway, that's enough of that. Daniel is here, listeners. In addition to just because we like him and we like MobileSyrup, Daniel is here because he was my seat neighbor at the LG G3 event in New York City.
Ah.
Yes, and he
Yes.
and I, along with the guy from New Jersey Tech News, NJ Tech Reviews, who I've met and I like, but he is not on the show, so we'll talk only about Daniel right now.
yes, please.
Yeah, we were simultaneously exposed to the wonderment that is the LG G3, this new smartphone that either impressed or failed to impress the tech press, but I think it's mostly in the camp of the former. I'm very interested in kicking this off by hearing your impressions overall. I just watched your hands-on video, but tell us what your thoughts overall are on the G3. Are you impressed, Daniel?
I am. I think that it's probably a better phone than the Galaxy S5.
Wow,
It's
cutting right to the heart of the matter.
Overall, I think it is. I think the G2 was a great phone with a few flaws. The major one was the usability. The backing was really slippery, like the Galaxy S4 was.
Yeah.
So I think LG has been cribbing. The thing is, what's interesting is that LG tends to release their phones about 6 months after Samsung and listens to the criticisms that the Samsung flagships receive and then just tweak their phones based on what Samsung's done wrong.
Sure.
And I think they've done similar things with the G3. Everything but the camera impresses. I think the fact that the camera has not really been improved that much is disappointing. The camera optics, mind you. I'm not talking about the software, but we'll get into that later.
Sure.
I do think that everything else has been substantially improved, and I'm sure we'll talk about the screen, which is just gorgeous.
The screen is stunning. There's no question. I want to talk about a point you raised in LG's listening, because this event was really well run. I talked about this a bit in our editorial roundtable, but LG did not pander to us. There was no patronizing happening. Basically, they just kept the focus on the device the whole time, and it was such a dense presentation that it was actually pretty hard to take notes.
I'm curious, for people who weren't actually there in New York, were you guys seeing a live stream of the London event? Was there something special happening just on the stage there in New York?
No.
Yeah.
We were basically ushered into a room with a beautiful view, but basically it was just a room with a bunch of chairs and 3 big old TVs.
Okay.
Oh, but they were curved TVs.
Oh, wow.
One of them was a curved
it's
TV.
LG.
They didn't
You
do
gotta
all
have
3 as curved ones. Yeah, I wanted to sit by the curved one, but we had to be in the back because the demo units were on another floor entirely.
Yeah.
So you had to like get into the elevators really quickly to go do that.
Let's just take a second to talk about the logistics of various New York-based events, because everything in downtown Manhattan is compact, right?
Oh, yeah.
So every time we go to an event there, you always see these companies trying to work with what they have. So in some cases, you know, they rent out these big warehouses and they try to do it up and make them pretty, but ultimately they're just big, echoey, noisy warehouses. But in this case, they actually separated it on 2 floors, as Michael said.
Which makes a degree of sense.
It does make a degree of sense, except for the bottleneck that were the 2 elevators, where everybody tried to ram themselves in there, sweaty. You know, it was like teenager-like. You know, I just felt.
Everybody's got like a bag of gear. Everybody's got a tripod. Some dudes have really big old TV cameras, and yeah, those elevators are about the size of the sound booth I'm in right now, which is 4x6. It's ridiculous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See, Michael, from your on the street, the editorial roundtable you shot with us, I assumed you were out in like a warehouse in Bushwick somewhere.
Right. No, see, it was actually quite posh. But Daniel makes a good point about events like that, because no matter where it is somehow inconvenient. Like, this was well done, with the exception of that bottleneck, and that's why I moved to the back of the room and didn't get the curved TV treatment, because I wanted to be first to the demo devices. But the thing is, I had to go outside and do that hangout from the sidewalk, literally from the sidewalk on a cellular connection, because it is always loud, regardless of the event size. And there's nothing you can really do about that. One thing that every company does have control over, though, is lighting. And lighting is never good enough at these things. Daniel, I noticed that you filmed your hands-on outside.
Yeah.
Which was a very smart choice. Yeah.
Except when the rain started spitting on me. So
That's the risk.
If you see an edit, I just basically put my back to the outside. But you know what? I had a decent camera with a prime lens. I was able to kind of get everything was fine except for audio because it was loud. But there was really nowhere else to do anything and the other thing is that they started tearing everything down about an hour after the presentation. So we were busy. Yeah, it was in that sense not very well run. But let's get back to the phone.
Yeah,
because I think
I have a point to make, although about the lighting situation, because like normally it's very dark, it's very blue, and they try and do dramatic stuff. LG had these beautifully daylit rooms, and it was great, but they still found a way to make it dark by bringing shades down over all the windows. So I'm just addressing a couple comments in this last hands-on video for the G3. Which called out the low frame rate, and the reason for that is I had to open the aperture so damn wide on my camera to allow enough light in that the frame rate just dropped through the basement. There's nothing I can do about it, except I'm kidding. I'm lying to your face. There is something I could have done about it. I could have been smart and gone outside, but I'm not Daniel. Good call there, brother.
Thank you, sir.
Let's get back to the phone, as you suggest. So I am interested, Stephen, before we steamroll over you completely, like from a foreign person's perspective, and by that I mean someone who wasn't at the event. What were your feelings on the phone after seeing all the live coverage?
The presentation itself, I don't think I was quite as enamored as you were with how LG pulled it off. I mean, it seemed a little dry almost. I
agree with that. Yeah.
Rushed through. I'm one of those few people who enjoys the spectacle that Samsung has been known to bring in the past. I don't mind the theatrics and all that, and I think for the features at least, it makes me pay more attention to them. And I know that LG was trying to emphasize the simplicity of the G3, how it's not all about these gimmicks and whatnot, but...
Yeah. How many times did they say simple in the presentation?
I know.
Oh, my God.
Man, it was just
ridiculous.
Getting beat over the head with that theme. I wanted to send some snarky tweets, but I was too busy taking notes, and you were too busy live blogging, Daniel. But so, like at the end of the day, Stephen, when you had been presented with all of these facts, and as I say, it was a very dense presentation. What was your take on the device? Were you impressed?
I mean, I like it. It's at this point, seeing as many phones as I have, it's hard to really blow me away. It's what I thought it would be. It seems incredibly solid. I'm still not sure that the public's going to respond to it in quite the way that LG is hoping. I'm worried that it's still going to look a little big compared to. And I know we saw your your comparison video. I think we're going to talk about that a little
size
later.
Comparison. Yeah, we can talk about it now. It's fine. Yeah, just size relative.
Yeah, I still think that it's pushing the limits of what people are going to be comfortable with, and I'm worried about that. But the design I like. I think LG made a lot of smart improvements over the G2, and that's impressive considering we were saying earlier about how LG likes to take a few months and respond to what Samsung did. This year they pushed the launch up significantly compared to the past.
Yeah.
So there's been less time to see what Samsung's done and learn from that. So this is more LG taking initiative, and I like that.
And taking notes on feedback from the G2, I think.
Yeah.
Because we saw a lot of stuff solved here in both hardware and software of going from the G2 to the G3. But I'm going to say, I don't think the size gulf is too big here between the G3 and the Galaxy S5. And I think that the added aesthetic punch that the G3 brings is actually really going to, is going to serve it well. Because you look at the S5 next to the G3 and it's just, it's sort of like... It's sort of like one of them is a demo model or like reference hardware, and the other one is the finished product. Like the Galaxy S5 is so unremarkable by itself that when you put the G3 next to it, you're like, oh, well, I know which one I would pick if I'm shopping on looks, right? Mm-hmm. And the 2K display certainly helps with that. By the way, it is 2K, right?
Yeah.
Like it's actually officially 2K. I was counting the pixels and in the rundown and the spec stuff, and I was like, wait a minute. I don't know how to refer to it because you've got 4K cameras and 2K displays. And
I'm picturing you hunched over your desk with one of those magnifying lenses on a swing arm, like 1, 2. Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's like tethered to my headband. Yeah, no, it's so I think that it's definitely has the aesthetic edge over the S5, but I'm interested in that conversation because I think for all the great stuff HTC did with the One M8, it's the real important comparison is G3 versus S5, and I wonder what your thoughts are, Daniel, on how this is going to do relative to that. Because it builds on a rather solid foundation with the G2, but I don't think the G2 did too well in sales.
Well, it certainly did better than the HTC One M7. I mean,
yeah, I think a lot of phones did, right?
Most phones did, but LG is still comparatively a more successful manufacturer of Android phones than Sony. We know that. We know that it sells, 15 to 20 million smartphones a year, most of which are probably low-end devices for developing countries, but still, right. They have a much higher budget for sales than most other companies because they're one of those chaebols. They're this huge South Korean company that has their hands in everything.
Sure.
I think that for their purposes, the LG G3 is just another showcase of all the vertically integrated portions of LG as a company. I mean, we got LG Chemical for their batteries, which is always amazing. I mean, you were telling me that the G Flex has the best battery life of any phone you've ever used, it doesn't surprise me.
Oh yeah, it's crazy.
The screens are always better. They always have an amazing relationship with Qualcomm, which is something that you can't. I mean, even though Qualcomm has a great relationship with every OEM, the day of, they're best friends with the carrier, with the OEM that they're working with, obviously. But I think in particular they work with LG quite closely.
It's interesting you mentioned Qualcomm there because it seems like one of the big complaints that I saw from as we were getting all the rumors leading up to the G3 launch, a lot of people were upset that we got this 801 rather than 805.
Which is the height of absurdity to me.
You have to find something to complain about, right?
No, but the 805 may not ever actually come to market. If it does,
we haven't seen that yet.
But it's a very, very iterative purpose. It's a purpose-based chip. It's meant for 4K type devices. So we're probably not going to see it in any substantive form in smartphones. I don't think. I think that they're going to jump over the 805 and go straight to the 810.
Or the 810,
because that's the A57 base and A53 base chips that will usher in the 64-bit, Android, revolution, so to speak.
Which still nobody cares about, really. I don't think anybody's proven that anybody gives a damn about 64-bit, but I don't know.
No, not unless it actually improves performance. But I think in terms of aesthetics, LG has a far better handle on things than Samsung because Samsung has a need to maintain the status quo. They have this Galaxy design that is so old now. It's so ugly, but they have to do it because it's the most recognizable Android brand out there. So LG has more room to work with.
I guess so, but you don't think that Samsung could change it up? I don't want to change the discussion and make it about Samsung, but I'm just saying I don't think they have to stick with that design. I think they choose to because it's a very safe bet. Mm-hmm. But I think they could be bolder than they have been, and we might see that going forward. But I mean, I agree that that these LG phones, the flagships, tend to be a showcase for all the different parts of LG. It's a really good way to look at it, but I have to say that the G2, in your hands-on when you were holding it up next to the thing, I think this thing really destroys the G2 in terms of its fit and finish, its feel in the hand, its appearance, and to say nothing of specs. I mean, specs that's guaranteed, but
one would certainly hope so, right?
Well, yes, but we don't see that on the Samsung side, right? It's like, oh, the S4 is basically the S3 except more boring. Oh, the S5 is like an S4 with greater capabilities, but the thing, and whereas LG has actually taken the feedback particularly on the aesthetic side, and said, all right, we're going to make this better looking. I just love the confluence here of I wish it was real metal on the back, but they've got a matte finish over it, not glossy, so it doesn't feel like the tacky nonsense plastic of the G2, which I always hated. And this thing looks like it was made to last. It looks like it was made to be looked at and to have people say, wow, what is that? Whereas the G2 kind of just faded into the background and was not remarkable. Mm-hmm. That aside, I want to ask one more thing about hardware, and then I want to talk about software. Do you think it was a mistake to sacrifice the water resistance that would have made it truly, stand on the same deck as the S5? Anybody can answer that. It's a general question. Or do you think that people don't care?
Yeah, I think it got to the point so quickly where waterproofing became ubiquitous that we already stopped caring about it. Like when it was just on, maybe one or two phones. Oh, hey, that's a neat feature, and now everyone has it. We sort of expected it, but at the same time, we're not. Even though the GS5 is waterproofed, I don't think that most users are going and throwing it or using it for underwater photography or crap like that. I think we've already sort of moved past it. If it's there, it's nice. If it's not, we're not going to complain about it. We're just going to be a little more careful with our phones.
I don't know. I was out in public using the Galaxy S5 shortly after it launched, and I was like dropping it in lakes and stuff. And I like to do this stuff in public because, whatever, it's a lot of fun. And people were stunned at what I was doing. Like, I mean, just passersby on the sidewalk were like, did that guy just drop his phone? And I'm like, it's okay, it's waterproof. And they're like, what? Like, their heads exploded. And this happened more than once. And that, this is a population that is not, I'm not living with a bunch of bumpkins. Like, this is an intelligent, engaged populace being like, I never knew that. And I'm like, wow, really? So
did most of them have iPhones though?
It's Boston, so pretty much everybody has an iPhone, yes.
Right. So I'm like on an ivory tower up here, all pish-posh. Oh, so many of these smartphones have launched with waterproofing now. No one cares.
Exactly. Well, that's what I mean. It was a nice shot of perspective as a reminder that, we exist in a very hyper-aware bubble within the greater world. So I don't know. I think that waterproofing thing, and that said, I don't think Samsung is necessarily leveraging that in its advertisements very much yet. And that's why a lot of people were surprised. So maybe that speaks in favor of LG's decision here. Maybe LG is like, we don't think a lot of people are basing their buying decision on that, so we're going to go ahead and make this thinner and lighter instead.
But they didn't. I mean, it's 8.9 millimeters. It's the same width. It's the same thickness as the G2. What's so interesting to me, though,
thinner. You're right. I'm sorry.
Is that if they really wanted to make it waterproof, they wouldn't have added a removable backing and removable battery, because Samsung made the very difficult decision of putting a tab over its USB port in order to prevent water from coming in, which is probably the most annoying tab I've ever used in my life. And I hate charging the GS5 for that reason. I mean, I just let it die. I'd rather let it die than charge it because it's so annoying.
This the furor over USB flaps has always escaped me. I've never had a problem. Maybe it's because
I hate them.
Well, I know everyone does but me, and maybe it's because I was a Nextel phone carrier forever, and they always had flaps over their ports to prevent dust and all this crap from getting. I always thought they were a smart idea, so I've always been used to them. But apparently, I'm the only one. So I understand, Dana, what you're talking about. But yeah, you think that would have impacted it pretty severely? You think you would be hating on the G3 a lot more if it had the flaps necessitated by a waterproof rating?
Well, no, I just think that it would have interrupted that aesthetic that LG's trying so hard, that smooth sort of pebble-like finish, the soft curves, the, if it, chamfered edges, if it has that sort of thing. I don't even know what that term means, as everybody throws it around. Do you have a chamfered edge? I have a chamfered edge. Let's just talk about chamfered edges.
How's your chamfers today?
Oh, they're so edgy.
Yeah, no, I liked back when the One M7 launched and the iPhone 5 too. We were like, oh yeah, what are synonyms for chamfered? Oh, beveled, beveled. That's what we'll use. That'll be great.
Yeah, exactly.
But, yeah.
I don't know. I just think that the G3 looks a lot better than most phones out there, except for the M8. But I mean, as we know, M8 doesn't necessarily sell on the virtue of its aesthetics. So what else? You have to have something else.
Right. Well, and I think the M8 is probably selling a lot better. It's definitely selling a lot better than the M7 did already. I believe. I don't have the link to back that up, like citation needed, but I think
HTC said as much, I think, yeah.
Yeah, so, but I agree. And that's why I say, so maybe that's an interesting comparison for another day. I'm really looking forward to getting this thing in the review booth, by the way. We don't have one yet, which is why we haven't had videos up yet, but very soon we're getting one. So it's going to be interesting to do that comparison versus the 1.8. I just continue to be much more fascinated by how this is going to play against the S5, the kind of reigning contender in the space. And I think it's going to do better than the 1M8 because we saw those commercials. We saw at first I thought they were maybe just for us. They were just for the announcement. But no, LG is going to use those in broadcast, I think. And they're really effective. They're like, they've got, an upbeat tempo. They've got a kind of not annoying music, but it makes you pay attention. And they're like 15-second spots. They're like, here's how to use a feature on the G3. And then there's like the answer is one sentence. It's like, do this. Done. It's quick, it's light, it has a little bit of a smirk to it. But it's also accurate because they did simplify a lot of the experience. So if they can use those effectively, I think they have a good marketing campaign on their hands. Go ahead, Stu.
Yeah, I think there's a solid chance that the G3 will outperform the 1M8 when it comes to retail sales. But at the same time, I don't think it's going to make much of a dent in the interest in the Galaxy S5.
I guess it depends on how serious LG is about it, right? I mean, you mentioned before, Daniel, that LG is a massive empire. They have their fingers in a lot of pies, from refrigerators to TVs to washing machines. How serious is LG's mobile division about making a huge dent here? Obviously, they're not. This isn't just a hobby. I mean, this is a 2K screen. They've got some great specs in this thing. They have a frickin' laser.
Oh, I have questions about that laser. Can we talk about that at some point?
Shall we talk about the laser?
Well, again, the laser is a good example of a device. It's a technology that LG developed for one of their Roomba competitors never got used. And, this is a company that makes frickin' robotic vacuum cleaners that they just throw away features. Oh, we don't need that. We have another laser type technology that we can use. Let's put it on our smartphone. Yeah. It's like, this is something that, the G Flex is a prime example of an experiment that they decided to make into a product. That should not have, even though it has its virtues, the G Flex is not a finished product by any means.
It is not. I agree with you.
So
I was too effusive in my review. I think I scored it a little high, but I truly was in love with it because using it does feel like holding a slice of the future.
You got hit by the dazzle.
I did. But even if it is a little bit on the prototype-y side, in all the ways that we've already covered. But I will tell you that I was using the G Flex at this launch because I knew I was going to compare it with the G3 just quickly. So I was like, why don't I pop the SIM in the G Flex and use that? And also the battery was excellent. So I'm riding in an elevator after the event, and I've got my LG tag on and whatever. And these two guys, hotel staff members, are in the elevator with me, and they're just staring at my phone. And I'm used to this with the G Flex because it does catch your eye with the curve. But they're like, "Oh, is that oh, look, it's curved. Did it come that way?" I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't bend it. Like it came curved." And they're like, "Oh, yeah, that's I've heard about that. That's from Samsung, right?" And I'm like wearing the LG tag, and the other guy's like, "No, dude." Like he points it out. I was like, "Oh, sorry. It just seems like everything comes from Samsung." I'm like, "Yeah, I think that's the uphill battle."
Right, it's Samsung versus Apple, right?
Right, exactly. So I think they have a story problem there. That but I'm sorry, Daniel. I didn't mean to hijack your point about the G Flex, but
no. I mean, the only reason I bring up the G Flex is. Rogers is one of the biggest carriers in Canada. It has 9 million customers. It's probably the most well known. And when
9 million?
Well, we only have 30 million people here, so 9 million is a big deal.
Just going to ask what the population of Canada. Wow, I didn't know that we only had 30 million people in Canada. That's crazy.
That's right. So when you look at Rogers' homepage, you have 3 phones on their feature devices. You have number 1, the LG G Flex, because it's an exclusive. You have the HTC One M8, and you have the Galaxy S5. But the LG G Flex is being pushed as hard or harder than the other 2 devices in their stores. Really? Because obviously it's an exclusive, but because they also agree with you. It is a slice of the future. Yeah. And I think you cannot kid yourself for a second. Better devices don't necessarily sell better. It's due to the carrier. If the carrier wants to push a certain product, they're going to do so. And that's how Samsung initially became successful, is that they teamed up with carriers on exclusives. If you remember the first generation Galaxy S phones, they were all different on every single US carrier. Yeah. They had a different variant.
Different names too on the different carriers as well.
Thank God we moved past those days.
Vibrant or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly.
Epic.
And they did that in order to appease the carriers, to sell them in prime spots in their carrier stores.
Yeah.
And once Samsung got big enough, then once the GS3 came out, they didn't need to do that anymore. But LG's in that same position. Last year, they created a special version just for Verizon with new buttons on the back and with wireless charging because Verizon wanted to differentiate themselves. And this year, they didn't do that. Why? Because they didn't need to.
That's true. Yeah. They're building themselves up in the same way that Apple and Samsung before them have done. No, I agree with that, and I think that's a favorable change, certainly.
Yeah, but carrier interest here in the U.S. seemed remarkably strong. The day of the launch, we got announcements from all 4 of the big guys saying that they'd be carrying this guy at some point. We don't always see that when a high-profile phone launches. How's the interest? I mean, in Canada, are the carriers similarly really excited for the G3 to arrive?
We have not heard a peep. I swear to God, there's not a single carrier has told us that they're carrying it yet. We know because a leaked product code came out that is coming out on Rogers and Bell, but and it'll probably come out on Rogers, Bell, and TELUS, which are the 3 big carriers.
But there's no official announcements yet.
Nothing yet. No.
Huh.
Well, yeah, we got some leaks on pricing, which we're going to talk briefly about in a second here too. So that is interesting, though, how different countries' carriers handle the thing. And, I will say that it's not always the case that a carrier pushing a handset will result in massive sales. I mean, we've seen AT&T throw their weight behind the Lumia line more than once, and I don't really think that's worked out, terribly well. Certainly, it was a favorable impact, but I don't think it was significant.
It continues to tickle me how, at least on the television shows I watch, everyone's using a Lumia handset. This is not reflecting reality.
Their product placement is crazy. Although in Godzilla, there's the G Flex in there with a big old LG logo on it.
Oh.
Yeah. I love that the logos in product placement devices are like 6 times the size of the actual ones.
Do either of you watch Justified as an off? Yeah. So
no,
did you notice that in every season up till now, everybody uses a flip phone or a BlackBerry, but all of a sudden in this past season, everybody in the show uses a Sony Xperia.
Awesome.
Even the bad guys use Sony Xperia phones.
Oh, I missed that. I'm going to have to pay attention to that.
That's what I liked about Captain America, too. Like, they were all HTC phones, but they were different generations depending on whether you were good or bad. Like, if you were good, you used an old school 1X Plus or whatever, and then if you were bad, you used a M8 or something. I don't know. And then you've got, that's another example. Speaking of HTC, that's another example of a carrier pushing a phone, and I'm not sure it's doing it any favors. Sprint's commercials for the Harman Kardon Edition 1M8 are effing ridiculous.
I have not seen these.
You're lucky. Count yourself among the lucky few who've not been exposed to these monstrosities. Do yourself a favor. If you want to, blow your mind, go just YouTube it. Just Google, Sprint Harman Kardon commercial and feel your brain ooze out of your ears as it tries to get away from this nonsense. So, I don't know. Carrier endorsements are a mixed bag sometimes. Let's talk about the software in the G3 before we sort of move into other stuff, because this was a big complaint that I had on the G2, which was ugly software. that LG had somehow made even more complicated than it was on the Galaxy S4. Do you remember the notification shade on the G2? Like, you drag it down and you had two permanent sliders, one for brightness and one for like system volume.
Oh my god.
That sounds good. I'm constantly having to dig through menus to adjust brightness when it's too bright for me to see anything, when it's too bright outside.
I have no problem with
want that persistent brightness slider.
I have no problem with the brightness slider, but why is there a persistent volume slider when I have a volume key? Oh, because the volume keys are on the back. Okay, yes, that makes a degree of sense.
To show you where the volume is currently.
Yeah, I don't need to see that all the time. But the thing is, there was a shortcut right next to the volume slider that looked a lot like the settings cog, which is normally next to the brightness slider. So I'm always tapping this thing, and then I get the volume thing. It was just, the software was a mess. That's the one example of a complete, just an utter dumpster fire in terms of software, and I hated it. And it looks like this year they've, well, simplified it, but I'm seeing in the comments on our hands-ons that a lot of people still don't like the software, and I think I might be one of them. Because while it is simpler, yes, I think it's also quite meh. They have this beautiful 2K display, and yet LG has chosen these colors that are really kind of dull and don't stand out at all, and there's no way to select colors that do.
Oh, but Michael, they're mature.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah, LG's pitch on this, if you didn't watch the live stream, was that, like, we didn't want, elementary, youthful, young people colors, like primary colors. And what they didn't call it amateurish. They called it, like, it was immature or something like that. They just totally dismissed these neon palettes of the
So instead of candy packaging, it looks like tissue packaging.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's so... I don't know. I'm not entirely sold on that. And it kind of makes using the phone dreary. Yes, things are flattened. Yes, there are more circular elements, which I actually like. I think that's kind of the style of the year, is to do circular widgets and stuff. But I'm not sold on the colors, and I think that was a misuse of that is a misuse of this gorgeous display. Do you agree? Am I making too big a deal out of this, guys, or do you agree?
Well, go ahead, Stephen.
I don't know. I don't have very strong feelings about the software on this, not having interacted with it, nor with the G2. So I'm an observer here. What do you think? You've used this guy.
You sound like you've got something brewing there, Daniel.
Okay, I think the G2 was the worst software I've ever seen on an Android phone in my life. I hated it with a passion of 1,000 Saurons. But
nice.
The G3 it's better, but it's not. LG clearly does not understand software engineering. They don't understand. I mean, they touted simplicity, but as you said, this is not simple software. This is better. It's better because it doesn't get in your way as much. For example, they changed the stupid virtual menu button to align themselves with Google now, so they at least have that going for them. They don't. The software doesn't seem like it overpowers you in the same way, but it's still very Samsung-esque in the sense that it wants to do everything for you. Android is so good now, it doesn't need to do everything for you. It's the reason that I pick up my Moto X more often than I pick up my GS5.
That's a good point. I haven't used my Moto X in a while, and I miss it because of those baked-in features that are so good in stock Android and the Motorola enhancements. But with LG, you have this skin that is aping functionality that's already there. Like, you have Google Now on the device, which is supposed to anticipate your needs and throw information at you before you ask for it. Yet LG has built in this completely separate thing. What is it called?
Smart Notice.
Smart Notice, yeah. Which does the same thing, except it has a different aesthetic. I know I'm overusing that word today, but I don't care. It accordions down, and it gives you basically the same stuff. I mean, why?
But it's augment. And we just had that article talking about all the things we wanted in Google Now that weren't there, and I think we're getting some of that with this LG system. It's augmenting Google Now rather than replacing it.
Yeah, but you're still using, like, you have to go to two places to get the information that you didn't ask for.
It's not elegant by any means.
Yeah, I just don't like redundancy when it's not done right. It's similar to how Samsung and LG, and actually a lot of OEMs, just build a separate app when a Google alternative is already there.
Or just their separate app stores.
Or separate app stores, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, at least they're not doing that.
Yeah, if you're going to duplicate something, do it better. And I'm not prepared to say that LG doesn't do it better than Google Now. However, I got to be honest with you guys, I don't think that LG is going to do it better than Google Now. And I think this is one of those things that's going to hang around for a generation. Maybe no one's going to use it, and then it's going to go away.
I really love what LG is doing with the telling you things about the phone. And this has been my complaint about Now and the features it lacks. There's not enough tight integration with the phone hardware itself. And I just heard, the one feature, how it can let you know when you're running low on storage space. That's a huge problem for me. I never know where I am until the phone starts yelling at me that I'm down to like 100 megabytes left.
Oh, that's a good point.
But this is something that I would expect Now to be doing. And if Google's not going to step up to that, LG, by all means, please show them how it's done.
That's a solid point.
But LG's not telling you that it's only going to be notifying you on hardware issues. So Google Now is more of a platform in the sense that it provides your context-based needs for kind of your wider life. So weather and travel and things that you're looking up, like search results and stuff like that. I mean, it doesn't really dig too deep into your local life, your local phone, your phone's storage, your temperature, whatever. That's LG's place to give you that information. I agree with Michael, though. If it starts getting in the way of Google Now, if you start getting notifications on travel and search results and stuff from both Smart Notice and Google Now, then I'll have a major issue with it.
I think it's going to be critical how LG handles that particular degree of overlap. But that's not the only thing they introduced. I'm kind of looking at the list because I can't remember. They did hit on a couple things. What were the other two big features they were calling out in the software?
The keyboard.
The camera.
Keyboard.
Oh my God, the keyboard. This I can't believe I forgot. This was one of my favorite things they did. Someone out there will correct me, and I welcome it because I would like to know, but I've never seen a keyboard that can be dynamically resized like this, where you can just drag it up to whatever degree you want, and it'll resize to whatever footprint you just selected. Like some keyboards will go small and large, or they'll have detents for small, medium, large, whatever. But this one, you can make it almost literally whatever size you want without getting absurd and using the whole vertical space of the screen. So, I mean, I think that's amazing. I think that there's also the cursor placement where you press and hold on the space bar and you can move the cursor around, very similar to the... Go ahead.
That's awesome. One of my biggest complaints about the Google keyboard is how awful cursor control is. And if you're trying to edit any text, it's a pain in the ass. Anytime
a press and hold action is required to do something, I get really annoyed. And especially if it's text composition, which I usually like to be a very fast thing. So, yeah, having that built in there, I'm going to use my WebOS mention for the podcast and say, I haven't seen a smart implementation of a cursor control like that since the Pre, where you had that gesture area and you can move stuff around. So that was wonderful. And then what was the other one? Didn't they just outright steal the BlackBerry Flick stuff?
Yes, it was pretty blatant.
You were sitting next to me. They announced that thing, and you were like, oh, come on.
Well, I mean, as a Canadian, you kind of have a little bit of
nationalism.
You've got to feel bad for BlackBerry.
I understand, but
not that bad, but a little bit.
But BlackBerry partnered with somebody on that. I always forget the keyboard vendor they partnered with because they kept it secret.
SwiftKey.
Was that SwiftKey? Yeah.
Yeah, but so did Samsung. I mean, even Samsung's built-in keyboard's pretty crappy, even though it has SwiftKey in it.
Gosh, yeah, it is. They're bad because when a company can't properly translate the text in a dialog box into English, they're not going to do a good job on the keyboard, and that's always the case. Although right now, ASUS is the reigning bad actor in that regard, but we'll talk about that later. So yeah, the keyboard is just I think it might be a home run, and it learns what sides of the keys you favor, as I recall too, right? Mm-hmm. They showed that map up there where it was like the software learns where, if you tend to hit the outside of the F key.
I think some other third-party ones have done that, but it's neat that we're seeing this from an OEM.
Yeah, because as I said, on the last show, I think, these out-of-box implementations are important. Yes, the beauty of Android is you can customize it, but it's very important for out-of-box things to work very well. And I think the keyboard is critical, and a lot of people have gotten it wrong. This is going to be sweet. I'm very much looking forward to using the keyboard on this device at length. I'm just looking at the presentation screen caps now. How many colors is this thing coming in? 5?
5? I think it's 5.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot.
Do they have like exciting? Of course they have exciting names for them, but I can't. Stephen, you didn't put them in the news post.
Meh.
You didn't give proper coverage to the flower violet and
Why can't it just be
ocean
purple,
blue?
man?
Yeah. What are we missing in the software, gentlemen? Before we, I know we wanted to talk about the camera a little bit. I want to talk about my favorite accessory ever. But I want to ask.
Oh, I'm curious.
You know what I'm talking about? Did you?
I don't, because you've expressed affinity for both that weird headphone horseshoe and the circle case.
Listen, the tones came to me in a moment of need. Have we had a podcast since did we make fun of the tones last week, Stephen? Were you here?
No, I wasn't aware of them. And then we learned about it over the weekend because we missed that announcement on Thursday.
Yeah. The LG tone, I don't remember if it was last episode or the one before. I'm sorry, everyone. They just kind of bleed together. But we were making fun of the LG tones really hard because Taylor had some friends who wore them all the time, and I just thought they made everyone look like an idiot. And then LG, of course, gives us LG tones in the gift in the swag bags from this event.
I didn't realize.
What you were talking about.
Yeah.
Are the earbuds on that? Do they are they retracted? Do you pull on them and they come back up into the horseshoe?
That
or
would be so smart, but no.
No,
it doesn't? Oh, I saw
magnet.
something and it made me think that. Oh,
But
magnet.
they do plug into the bottom, though, don't they? Oh, I just learned that. Thank you, Stephen. I didn't know why there were gaps in the bottom of the horseshoe, and now I don't read the instruction manual, so. Daniel, you apparently knew that.
I didn't. I mean, I didn't read the instruction manual, but
You have common sense.
Yeah. They teach us that in schools here. I'm not sure about
Well, in the
greater
U.S.,
Boston area.
It's not covered in the Common Core. No, anyway, I just think that tones are one of the oddest and kind of ugliest looking accessories out there. So we made fun of them a lot in the last show. But when I had to do that hangout on the street and I had forgotten my earbuds,
Saved yo butt.
the tones saved that entire editorial roundtable. It saved us the never-ending barrage of comments we got in the HTC One M8 roundtable where nobody could hear me because I was using an on-device speaker and mic. So anyway, I immediately fell in love with the tones because they saved my butt. But then I continued to use them. And despite some kind of crappy Bluetooth reception ability, I think they're great. If you put your phone in your back pocket, they will not be able to talk to your phone. But whatever.
Boo.
Yeah, agreed. Hiss. So those are the LG tones. I don't know why we started talking about that. Let's someone take
Your
it
favorite
away from me.
accessories.
Yeah. Oh no, God, yes. No. So those aren't my favorite accessories. The Quick Circle case, guys.
Okay, there we go.
Oh my God, Daniel, did you play with one?
I didn't.
You missed out.
No, I didn't. I
You
couldn't
did.
care less about cases.
Let me tell you what, you are wrong. You are 100% wrong. Because the Quick Circle case makes that phone at least 7% more enjoyable to use.
Oh
At
my
least.
God.
You close it, and first of all, you get a nice preview of what the Moto 360 is probably going to look like, first of all, because they have all these like clock faces that kind of play behind the window there. But you've got all these shortcuts that kind of look cool, and in addition, you're not always going to be confined to like the existing shortcuts, which are like LG Music Player and who cares, and Notepad.
But
or
you can
whatever.
customize them, right?
You can, but they're going to release the SDK. So if developers want to write stuff, and I really hope they do, and it's going to depend on how well the G3 sells, I guess, and chicken and egg and whatever, but you're going to be able to do other stuff inside that window. I love.
All I want is a rotary dial widget.
Oh,
That would just
somebody's
make my
gonna, It's
day.
going to be like one of the first 5 things.
Yeah,
to come
yeah.
out. Yeah. Actually, I really want that now too.
Ooh, or like a combination lock for unlocking the phone.
Oh, that would be sweet.
Yeah.
Why don't you have a development house? Why aren't you making this right now?
It's call.
Well, I made the point in the hands-on where I was like, the flip cover for the S4, or no, the S-View cover for the S4 really made me enjoy using that device more because it actually brought something else to the experience. I could use the phone. It was almost like faking a different form factor. So for those of us who are novelty obsessed, and I'm happy to admit that because that makes me like most of the world, I think, it really breathes a little bit of new life into your phone. And this thing, the Quick Circle case, is just so much more interesting. It's a much more stylish implementation. It's a lot of fun. So I recommend, Daniel, that you get your hands on one because
Do we know
was a
how much
good
it
time.
is?
I don't care. It can be $100. I'd buy it.
No.
I'm kidding. I did rip the S-View case for being $70. So I don't know how much it is. Do we get word on that? Because we don't have pricing info on the G3 yet. Steven, you want to talk about that?
Well, we have some guesses at least.
What do they say?
Yeah, well, so a couple of these U.S. So all the U.S. carriers have said, the big ones have said, we're going to get this guy. They've mentioned summer as far as availability. We don't have a month in particular yet, but a few of them have these contests going now where they're giving away a whole bunch of G3s in advance. I think T-Mobile's calling them beta phones. I mean, these are production models at this point. It's not like we're going to get another revision of the hardware before the retail sales begin. But because it's a contest, you have to have all of these rules. The lawyers have to approve everything. And, buried down there in the details, you have to explain what the prizes are and what they're worth. So we're kind of getting, it may not be exact, but we're getting a average retail value. T-Mobile saying that their G3 is worth $650, which sounds about right for a flagship like this. Because the weird thing, though, is that Sprint says that its G3 is only worth $600. So there's some theorizing that the difference in price there might be one's the 2 gigabyte RAM, one's the 3 gigabyte RAM. Mm-hmm. I'm not convinced, but I think we're definitely looking at a price around $625, $650 in the U.S. Who knows what it's going to be on contract? $200 probably. I doubt they can do $300 with this guy, even with the 2K display. But
no, I disagree with you. I actually don't think that the North American market's going to see that 2 gigabyte, 16 gigabyte variant.
No, I wouldn't have expected it to.
I think that they're going to keep that for the Chinese, Chinese sort of developing markets that where they can charge $500 for it. I don't see them offering two. It's already not well known. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say.
And I just think that the U.S. customers are a little paranoid now because we saw with the GS5 last year, we get the first one, and then a couple months later, South Korea gets the fancy Snapdragon 800 version, and we're just a little paranoid about not getting the best out there.
Yeah, well, then that was started thanks to Samsung splitting it between the Exynos, like the Octa, remember and then the Qualcomm. It turned out the Qualcomm one performed better, at least in my testing.
Wop, wop.
Yeah, so I don't know. None of that pricing really surprises me. I think it will be a little annoying if certain carriers here don't get both versions, but I think that is a likelihood. I thought it was an interesting choice of LG as a final hardware point to slave the RAM with the storage options, because that's confirmed, right? Like 16 gig gets you 2 gigs of RAM and 32 gig gets you 3 gigs of RAM. Is that correct? Yeah. It's weird, but all right. I don't know. I don't think I've really ever been hurting for RAM on an Android phone, or at least not in a while. I don't generally juggle like Asphalt 8 and the full Office suite, or the full, whatever the equivalent is, and like Sky Gambler's Air Supremacy. Like, I don't do that. I do one big thing at a time. So I don't know why I need a ton of RAM.
At the same time, RAM costs nothing. I mean, it's like a $5 different in component cost when we're looking at 2 gigabytes versus maybe $10, but it's nothing.
Across millions of devices, though. I mean, that's a consideration. It's important.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to keep the G3 discussion confined to about a half hour. We're at the 48-minute mark. I think
let's keep it going.
I would like to wrap it up a little bit. I think there's a couple things we missed.
Lasers.
Yeah, the laser thing, the camera thing. Let's just touch on that very quickly.
I'm confused about this laser. You guys have seen this thing. Maybe you can clear this up for me.
Yeah. So are you confused? Like, are you asking, does it shoot a beam of light out that hurts other people?
No. I had gone into this thinking it would be like the focus assist I have on one of my standalone cameras, where it uses a lens or a diffraction grating. It projects a pattern out in infrared. It sees this with the camera, and then based on it can quickly adjust the focus of the camera. When the pattern pops into focus, then it knows it's focused. From the presentation, though, I got the impression this was working like a LiDAR gun, where it wasn't shooting at a pattern. It was just a beam of light, and then it records the distance it takes the beam to round trip travel back to the sensor. Is that what it's doing, or is it doing the pattern thing?
No, I believe I believe it combines phase. What is it? Phase something autofocus
Phase detection.
That's what most phones use, right?
Right. So it combines that. That's kind of like the standard, and then it does the distance-based laser, whatever. Like it's basically it measures the time that the laser takes to come back and tells you how far it is.
You don't happen to have an infrared sensitive camera that you could check this with, do you?
I don't. Oh, well, it depends.
Night vision goggles?
That would be awesome.
Oh, no, I put them in storage.
And
oh, man. No, that would be great. I would love to see if you're talking about seeing the visible beam in using a certain wavelength goggle.
About. Yeah,
that'd be great. I don't know.
But this is just an academic concern. I mean, the important thing is that whether or not it actually improves the autofocus speed and how it does it.
I think it does. I took a couple shots of the G Flex using the G3, and it was very quick to focus. I mean, it knew exactly what I wanted to do, and it took that shot very quickly. Did you take any sample shots, Daniel?
Yeah, I did. I thought it focused quickly, but I didn't think that its improvements over the GS5 and the HTC One M8 were substantial enough to claim, that we are the fastest autofocus camera smartphone on the market. Like, it's a matter of 25 milliseconds at most. I mean, those are under ideal light conditions too.
Oh, that's it.
Do you remember anything about the camera app launch time though? Because I don't.
No, I didn't actually measure that. Not yet.
Me either. I haven't either yet. Because that's the important thing. The pocket-to-picture time is important, and all of that factors into it. The camera launch time, the autofocus, the snap. And, they said something about shutter speed as well. I think this enabled – everyone's doing faster shutter speed now. So I'm sure that this is part of the club. So I think all of that together might result in faster pocket-to-picture time, but we won't know until we actually get the thing in our pockets. But there's also enhanced optical image stabilization, where in a year where manufacturers are still – shrugging off OIS if they did before, or actively dismissing it like HTC has done in favor of the Duo camera, which is a move I didn't think was a very smart idea. You have LG saying, no, OIS is still cool, and also we're enhancing it. What is the enhancement? Do you remember? It's a very minor one between OIS and OIS Plus, right?
I don't even know.
I feel like there was 20-something better. I don't know if it was 20 times better or... mentioned 20 in there.
I can't see it. I'm kind of looking at the spec sheet here on a couple different things.
And I don't know if it's better hardware for the actual component or if it's just being, faster in its response time to, changes in the light position. It's unclear what they changed exactly. Suffice that it's better.
Yeah.
I think that the overall phone is bigger, so the OIS module is probably a little bit bigger, which makes it kind of stabilizes it faster if you can think of it like that. But I also think that OIS is necessary because they didn't actually enlarge the aperture at all. They kept the aperture at f2.4, which is smaller than pretty much every other phone on the market right now.
Yeah, we're used to seeing them around 2.
Yeah. Which is disappointing.
From our original news post, it's vague, but at least it's something. OIS gets an upgrade from previous LG designs, now compensating for even rougher handling. So that appears to be the change here. I mean, I don't know how they're doing it mechanically, but it seems like you can maybe shake this thing a little harder.
Right.
Which is good because, I have to say that though I am impressed with the fluidity that OIS offers in the viewfinder, it makes the experience of shooting a little bit smoother and better. Sony is doing the same thing basically with software. And what I'm really interested in is being on a boat or on a train or another moving platform and the camera compensating for that. Because right now I still see motion blur in even the best OIS rigs like the One M7 and the Lumia 1020, I think.
1020.
Yeah. So, anyway. By the way, I still have the 1020 somewhere. It's my daily driver, but I haven't used a daily driver in months. For those of you asking. I still technically carry the Moto X and Lumia 1020. Let's wrap it up on the G3. I know we've got to get Daniel out of here in just a few minutes. Before you go, Daniel, because Stephen will be sticking with me, I would like to ask you for your thoughts on the G3. I know we don't have review units yet, but I know we sort of kicked off the show with general thoughts, but do you think this is going to be the blockbuster hit that LG wants, or is it just going to be the G2 Redux this year?
It is the LG G2 Redux. I think that it'll probably sell 20 to 25% better, just like the G2 sold 20 to 25% better than the Optimus G, or maybe that one sold probably more. But I think that LG does have an issue competing with Samsung. I just think that people think of LG as an also-ran version of Samsung, and despite the phone being, as I said, a better, in my opinion, probably a better device overall, even though it probably doesn't have as good a camera, or it doesn't have waterproofing, I still think that the aesthetics, the screen resolution, I actually, and I may regret saying this, I actually think I like the software better on the G3 than the GS5. I'm sorry, don't hurt me. But yeah, I'm looking forward to playing with it. I only got about 10 minutes with it, and it was the Korean version, so it didn't have a lot of the US or Canadian software tweaks on it yet. But I'm very excited about this phone.
Well, I think you are certainly not alone in that. I join you in that excitement, and we will be getting our hands on a unit again shortly. So let's revisit this conversation in the form of a review. And you can find that at Pocketnow when it goes up, but you can also find one, I'm sure, eventually at MobileSyrup. Daniel, tell everybody where they can find you over there and elsewhere on the internet.
I am at JourneyDan, like Journeyman with a D, on Twitter, and MobileSyrup.com.
Last time you were on the show, I got the MobileSyrup joke.
Yeah, you are slow to respond to these.
And then JourneyDan and Journeyman. I didn't. Well, look at that. I can be dumb sometimes. MobileSyrup.com, JourneyDan on Twitter. Daniel Bader, you are a gem for coming on the show. Thank you for your time. It is always great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. Sorry I had to duck out early.
No worries. You enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy your weekend.
You too, guys. Thanks a lot.
See you, man.
Take care.
Bye.
That was a wonderful time, folks. We changed it up on you a little bit. We put the feature first, the feature, quote, unquote. We meant to keep that G3 conversation a little bit shorter, but, there's a lot to talk about with that phone. And
it's an interesting phone. We have a lot to say.
It really is. And I want to tell you something a little more specific. I just got an email in the interim that indicates that a G3 will be coming our way very shortly. So we'll be able to cover that. In the interim, though, I have another device that I'm in the midst of experiencing right now. Another device that I got my hands on in New York City on the same trip as the G3. This is the ASUS PadFone X.
Oh, yes, finally making its appearance.
I have to tell you that I did not know what to expect. Listeners, if you don't remember what the PadFone is, it's not the phone pad. It's not the big old Nexus 7 with an earpiece on it. It's the convertible. It is the smartphone, the 5-inch smartphone that plugs into the back of a tablet dock to become your tablet. So it's two devices in the same box. And it is finally being offered by AT&T. Many of our European, Indian, and Asian, and African, many of our non-U.S. listeners are wondering why the hell we're making such a big deal about this, because the PadFone X was announced 5 months ago. What are you guys doing? AT&T is the only U.S. carrier to offer it, and they've just announced it. It's up.
I think it's only in the U.S. too, isn't it?
What, the PadFone X?
I believe so.
I don't know that detail. I just know we saw it in Barcelona 5 months ago, and we've been waiting for it.
And this is, PadPhones have been around for years. I think we're up to the third generation.
This is the third gen.
Yeah.
Then the first gen had that crazy VCR door on the back where it protected the phone.
Oh yes.
Big old door on the back of a tablet dock. This is a somewhat more efficient, streamlined implementation. It's still pretty clunky when it's in the dock, but the phone is exposed so that you can still shoot pictures with its camera. Anyway, the thing is, yes, this is a Snapdragon 800 powered device, which is nice. The software is not final, so it's buggy as anything. And it's going to get an update before it launches, thankfully. But
Jesus.
But the thing is, it's not a remarkable device. I'm holding it right now. This is an audio-only podcast, listener, so you will have to imagine, if you will, the most nondescript rectangular black slab you ever saw in your life. There's almost nothing special about it.
And that's always been the problem with these PadPhones, is it's a one-trick pony. They plug into the tablet. At least with the PadFone X, the specs are pretty, flagship level, maybe mid last year flagship, but still they're up there. But it's just
I agree, but I've started to think of the phone as like an entry level flagship in quotes.
Okay, I can see that.
And the reason for that is it's not a one-trick pony anymore, at least not the way AT&T is positioning it, because while the retail price is still something like $549, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, on contract now.
In contract, you sign up for a 2-year contract, you get this thing, it's $199.
Yeah, that's going to be key to whether or not this is accepted by American smartphone users or not.
Yeah. And
never has this been affordable before.
No. And I apologize because I'm going to maybe sound like a commercial here, but I mean, I can't get past that price point in my head. I keep thinking about, I unboxed it. So the unboxing is up. The link is in the show notes. You can watch the unboxing and just kind of realize for a second that when you open this box, the first thing that greets you is a tablet. The next thing that greets you is a phone, and then you have earbuds, chargers, and whatever. All of that is in the same box. You get a phone and a tablet for $200, and it's not like a cheesy off-brand, like Verizon wireless tablet. It's like, but at the same time, it's not really a tablet. It's just a dock. So I'm having the most crazy brain explosion when I use this thing, because every time I use it, I'm using it in tablet mode. I'm surprised when I'm not near a Wi-Fi hotspot and it still works, and I'm like, oh. So my thought process is like, oh, yeah, that's right. This tablet has a cellular data connection. Oh, wait, no. This is the phone providing that, and the phone is fueling everything. So, when I'm browsing on the phone in the browser and I plug it into the back of the tablet and the tablet screen comes on, and it's what I was doing just a second ago, only bigger. And it's just
how are the transitions
so cool.
there between when you're swapping the plugging the phone into the tablet? Is it fast as it switches?
So that's a two-part. There are two answers to that. The first answer is it is about 3 seconds for transition.
It's a little long.
Well, I understand that it has a lot to do, so I'm willing to forgive that. And when you use the ASUS apps, like the calendar, the ASUS email app, the browser, the transition is as close to seamless as I think you can get. It really flows quite nicely, to the point where Tony sent me an email with an embedded spreadsheet, and I feel like I was in an ASUS or an AT&T commercial, because I was like, oh, I can't look at this on the phone. It's too small.
That's how they all are. It's like one business guy wants to share this presentation with the other guy. Let me just show you this.
The other guy's like, oh,
PowerPoint
my eyes are bad. I can't see it on that small thing. And then he's like, let me show you. Let me pull out this tablet from my backpack. But that's how it went. And, it blew up on the screen, and I was like, oh, wow, now I can see it on the tablet. However, if you do not use the ASUS apps, if you're using the Google standard editions like the Gmail app, like Hangouts, like anything that you actually want to use instead of the sort of crappy ASUS ones, Google Play Services doesn't support that transition. So what happens is you're given a dialog box on the device that you just switch to that says, hey, Google Play Services doesn't support this. Oh. Do you want to restart the app? And then you hit the button and it restarts the app. So
that's all.
Yeah. And granted, it is only one step to basically accomplish the same thing, but it's an ugly step. It's an error step. It's a you did something wrong step.
I've been worried that something like this not specifically this error, but I may be wrong about this, but is the aspect ratio on the tablet different from the phone itself? And could that be the source of some of these troubles?
I don't
because
know,
I believe that the tablet it's not 1080. I mean, it's not 1920 by 1080. It's
1920 by 1200. Yeah.
Right. So that would be 16 by 10.
Whereas the phone is 1920 by 1080.
Which is 16 by 9.
Right. So maybe that is the core of the issue. I made a point to ask the ASUS folks and the AT&T folks whether that would be fixed by launch, and no. They're basically, Android, Google has to implement it within Android. It's not anything they can do about it. Mm. So the only thing they can do is pitch as strong a case as possible to get you to use the ASUS apps.
Mm-hmm. But you think that ASUS would have Google's ear when it comes to tablet support by now, but
you would think, yeah. But I still think this is one of those wonky things that Google looks at and it's like, it's cool that you can use Android to do that, but we're not interested in supporting
an edge
this.
Case.
Exactly. But at the same time, so I have that objection. I have some concerns, as I said, with the aesthetics. There are the tablet sort of wobbles on a tabletop. It's it's just clunky.
It's got this big phone on the back,
right? And it's certainly not attractive. The phone's battery is a little small, whereas the tablet dock's battery is only almost 5,000 milliamp hours. So that's a benefit. But the phone's battery is a little small. So there are trade-offs. However, every single time I think of a trade-off, I'm like, but it's $200.
Yeah. I mean, they could probably get away charging $300 on contract, and we'd still be saying this is a great deal for what you're getting.
That's another point. You can spend another $100 and get a keyboard dock.
Oh.
That really makes it a whole.
Well, that's like
package.
A laptop, practically.
Exactly. And I can't stop thinking about college students. And not college students with a lot of money to spend, but like seriously, you're going back to school and it's like, well, I definitely want a tablet. I definitely want a smartphone. I need them. Why don't I just get both in the same box and get the keyboard dock, spend $300? Yeah, it's a 2-year contract, but also you don't have to get a special data package. Like the smartphone's data package is powering the entire experience. So you're saving money monthly as well. Like I said, I told you, I was going to sound like a commercial. I just cannot stop thinking about that. And, they weren't aggressively drilling this into my head at the thing. They weren't like being like, but remember, it's awesome. Like I kept saying it. And I'm like, wait, so hold up. You're not charging more for the data package? Aren't you AT&T? Like, isn't this something you would normally,
Yeah, nickel and dime us for.
Exactly. But no, they're not doing that. So I wonder what kind of backroom deals had to be struck in order to do that. Like, this is only ASUS's third device on AT&T's network.
Maybe this is why it took 5 months between the announcement and this guy finally showing light of day.
Yeah. I asked why the timing was right now and kind of got some, non-answers, but they were very accommodating. Anyway, we're going to review this thing early next week. I'm going to spend all weekend with it. I'll tell you what the biggest surprise of it is the camera. The camera is actually quite good, I think.
Yeah, they've been talking about this. It was a 13 megapixel.
It's 13 megapixel, but in low light, they're doing some crazy stuff. I don't know that they're doing anything overly complicated. They might just be blasting the exposure up or something like that. But when you shoot this thing in night mode and in reduced light mode, it's something. I mean,
the aperture is off the top of your head?
Right.
I'm curious.
Not off the top of my head, I'm sorry. But it's sort of like using the Xperia Z2 again, where that just had out-of-this-world low-light performance. The PadFone is at least in the same league. Of course, it's a very noisy shot when you do that, but
looks like f2.0, so it's not that much different from what we're used to.
I think it's got to be something on software or just a really long exposure, because you do have to hold still for a few seconds.
Well, that could do it.
Yeah. So anyway, we're going to talk more about that, but yeah, I don't want to talk about this for very long because I know I'm going to talk about it more on the next show. So let's
moving on.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Another device just landed on AT&T in quite a surprising turn of events. Isn't that right, Stephen?
Yeah, we got the Galaxy S5 Active dropped on us overnight, and this is becoming routine now with some of these follow-ups to the flagships. We had the One Mini 2 came out of practically nowhere a little bit earlier this month. Still May, isn't it? Yeah, a little earlier this month. And now the GS5 Active lands on us. And I've got to wonder if this might be in response to that massive leak that came out a little earlier. And at this point, if Samsung was like, well, cat's out of the bag, we might as well here.
I think that is the case. This got dropped on us at midnight Eastern last night. And I will tell you that I had just come from a party and I was kind of winding down. So I'm sitting by myself in this club, and there's, neon lights all around me. I'm enjoying my drink and kind of thinking about not cell phones. And this email comes in. It's like, Galaxy S5 now available for pre-order at AT&T. I'm like, wait, what? And I think the tone of the release was certainly we kind of didn't want to do it this way, but here it is. So I do wonder if that is in a response to the leak, but maybe I'm just reading too much into the PR copy. Maybe it's me. But
have we heard anything about international launch of this guy, or just AT&T's?
I don't think we have heard anything about an international launch.
Because I'm sure other people will be interested in buying this phone.
Yeah, so it is the one that we saw leaked by TK Tech News. It is a beefier S5, and the thing that I like most about this, okay, I gotta say it's pretty ugly, right? But the thing that I like most about it is that it doesn't really appear to make any spec compromises. Whereas last year's S4 Active substituted an LCD for AMOLED, this does not.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas last year's S4 Active did an 8-megapixel camera to the 13. This is still the 16 of the S5. The battery, I think, is the same, 2,800 milliamp hours in both, right?
Sounds about in the right range for the GS5.
Yeah. And, 4.4 KitKat, LTE, obviously. I think the 800, hold on a second. Is it a Snap 800?
2.5 gigahertz.
They're not saying.
Yeah, that must be an 801.
Yeah, because that's the only thing that runs at 2.5, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we're assuming it's an 801. Anyway, this is another device we're going to have in the office for review, so I'm very much looking forward to this. You remember how much I loved the S4 Active last year, despite its compromises. So
I correct a typo in this post.
Oh, all right, yeah, please do.
Unless the GS5 Active has a heart rate monitor.
There's another one in there too, actually. This one also has. So the S4 Active was only immersion resistant and dustproof. This one also brings mil-spec 810G, which is why it's uglier. It can withstand some more, bangs and such. Is there any mention of OIS in this sucker?
Not seeing. Let me double check.
I'm not seeing it either, because that's what TK. That was that kind of funny leak video that we sort of made fun of. We were like, "Hey, man, like a rattle does not mean OIS necessarily."
That was a little.
We had a fun exchange on Twitter about that. I'm not seeing any mention of optical. No, I don't see it on the product page either. But,
oh well.
Yeah. Anyway, it's engineered for adventure. AT&T is pitching it. If you want to buy one retail, it looks like $714.99. Woof. Instant savings with contract gets you down to $199, which I think is the same price as the S5. Is that what you were saying before?
Yeah. So this, no real trade-offs. I mean, you can get this for. I mean, if you wanted an S5, it's not going to cost you any more to have this guy, as long as you're not turned off by the aesthetics of it, which I kind of like.
Yeah, I like it too. It's beefy. It's rugged.
And it's still got some of those exposed screws on the back, like the S4 Active had. I love that industrial look.
There's a button on this thing that isn't on the S5. What's that blue button above the volume rocker? What's that for?
Yeah, we saw that in those videos. This is a customizable software button. You can use it to pull up some of the Samsung apps. I think the default, it pulls up one of the, I can't name it off the top of my head, one of their health apps where you can keep track of
their active thing or whatever.
I wonder but you can change it. You can have a short press or a long press. It can be used to pull up different things.
Is this compatible with AT&T's push to talk?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think so. At least I don't think that's the intent for this. But
yeah, I was wondering if you can slave it to that, but I don't see anything on AT&T's material.
No reason why you couldn't.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Well, we're gonna bring this to you too. I could talk for me about rugged phones. I could talk forever about this, but let's keep on powering through. I think that's pretty cool. We've got to talk about this next thing briefly. This was another unexpected drop. This one from HTC. It looks like, what was the story here, Stephen? HTC China went and released some news that maybe it was a little early?
Something like that. So we've been following this one M8 Ace for the past couple months, and the story behind this guy has been a little tricky to wrap our heads around because we've been hearing so much information. Not all of it has aligned precisely, but we were expecting some sort of cheaper version of the one M8 for release in China. And we saw some hardware leaks that just looked weird. Then we saw some ones that looked a little more traditional, a lot like the one M8 itself, but with a few aesthetic changes, replacing the metal for plastic, dropping the duo camera in favor of a big 13-megapixel camera, and moving the flash to where one of the depth sensor was.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I can see that.
Yeah,
the flash is above there. Yeah.
And then a little earlier this week, we got all these leaks where it looked like official promotional pictures describing the features of this guy. And then, sure enough, yesterday we saw HTC China publish these very same images on its own website, and it made an announcement on Weibo, the Chinese social site, about this contest it was running, giving away a bunch of these phones. Sales haven't started yet. I think they're still probably a month away, but it's confirmed. We're still not exactly sure what to call this thing, though. A bunch of translations have been made for the Chinese character that HTC has been using here, with the Vogue edition, Fashion edition, and until we get some sort of, I'm not even convinced we're going to get an announcement from HTC telling us what to call this guy in the West, unless it's intended for release here, which we still don't know. But it's confirmed this thing exists. Although this raises the question. Then there was another thing we were looking at. This is the phone. It was similar in layout to the one M8, but the top and bottom, where we have the grills on this thing, pretty much match the one M8. but we've seen these images of one where the grill sort of extends across the whole,
yeah,
from
like
left to right.
the entire material there. Yeah.
Right. And there was an initial leak that was, we didn't know what we were seeing, but then it popped up again more recently from China's version of the FCC, and that's not what this phone is. So we still don't know what that guy is.
That is weird. It was, jeez, man, HTC is, well, they're possibly fulfilling that promise of more devices at more price points. Instead of just relying on the singular flagship to drive the whole thing, they're going to, broaden their portfolio somewhat.
And we've also had the B2, the new butterfly that's probably going to pop up somewhere in Asia at some point, which looks slightly different from all of these ones we've been talking about.
There's a lot to see on that. I think so. I think until we know more, let's move on to something that I found very interesting until I realized the damn video was private. What in hell?
Oh, they made it private?
Yes.
Man.
So we were looking. This is a wearable thing, guys. We love wearables.
Darn it. Yeah, wearables have been. Wearables have been blowing up this week. I mean, I've been covering more wearable stories in the past few days than I remember in recent history.
It's been fun. I've been enjoying it. But this G Watch was it was teased at the G3 event. LG, their final point for the G3
they had it on showing it with the accessories, right?
Yeah, they're like, we have a lot of accessories for this, and it was like G Watch. I'm like, oh, are you going to talk about that?
I kept thinking of some Apple, and one more thing.
I know. I sort of didn't expect it, but then I was just glad they teased it. But I think there's no question we are going to see this thing at I/O. Would you agree?
If not then another event around the same time. But when this thing was announced back in March, I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised if it had its formal retail announcement just a couple weeks later. As soon as we learned about this thing, it seemed nearly ready to go.
It did, yeah. It seemed much more close to release, or much closer to release than the Moto 360. But of course, it has a commensurate reduction in wow factor just because it's like a square smartwatch. Like, so what? However, it is one of the first Android Wear devices, so we were excited to see, I guess, a hands-on video. Did you watch it?
I did. So we've seen hands-on pictures of the G Watch before, but it was powered off at the time. And then this video popped up yesterday. It's in German and didn't show us that much. A lot of it was still looking at the hardware of the G Watch itself. But briefly, we got to see some of the interactions with Android Wear.
How did they power it on? Just a button pressed on the side? Is there like a tap on the face to wake it up?
There's no button on the side.
There's no button?
No, the only hardware button's on the back, and I'm guessing it's a reset button.
Well, how do you wake it up?
I don't know. I didn't catch that from the video, and it seemed like they only had a very brief amount of time to interact with this. We saw the same, short run through the menus looped twice. So,
okay.
I'm sure that may be why this was made private. They weren't supposed to be sharing it, and darn it, I had the inclination when I first saw this thing
to skim it.
I should download this. This probably isn't going to last, and I didn't. But
I did a quick search to see if anybody else had re-uploaded it. I couldn't find it. But
I seriously considered it for a brief moment, but then at the same time, what am I going to do? Re-upload this to Pocketnow and get sued? So
no.
Yeah. But we saw, just scrolling through a list of timers, we saw they didn't even have a clock face. This was a very early Android Wear. But we could see, you can pull down to see the battery remaining. It was neat. It had some swipe controls, but it's a taste.
Aesthetically, did it match the screenshots we saw in the other linked post in the rundown, like these notifications?
No, this is I think far earlier than what we saw. Those the officially released one of Google's Android accounts, or one of the people working for Google, released I think 7 or so screenshots showing what developers can do with notifications being sent to Wear, and so things like multi-screen notifications, so swipe to get the rest of it, notifications with media playback controls like we see on Android itself.
Yeah,
this is a lot further along.
Yeah, I gotta say I was a little disappointed because I clicked through. It was like sweet, and then it's basically just there's like 7 of them, and it's like Nest. There's a Nest alert and there's a Clash of Clans alert. So the alerts look like white cards that you might see in Google Now.
Yeah, very Now-ish.
But they have like a thumbnail on them to tell you what app they're coming from, which is pretty cool. And then they just they have very readable text and stuff you'd expect. But it didn't blow my head off.
Yeah, but these I think were mostly the basic notifications, because Google alluded to developers being able to do a lot more watch specific stuff to give users interactivity. A voice response to things, like there could be a notification and you can just speak what do you want to do next? Like, oh, you got a text message. Okay, show me the text message.
God, there's always we're going to move on, but always every frickin' smartwatch post, there's always some goddamn killjoy to be like, oh, what do we need a smartwatch for? Get out of my face, everyone. God, I can't stand that. Anyway, finally, the last bit of news on the G-Watch is that there is this rumor, and I don't know the credence of this. Rithvik reported on it, I think yesterday or the day before, that the G-Watch may operate independently of its companion smartphone, meaning it would have an embedded SIM.
Gear Solo style.
Yeah.
Embedded SIM is weird, though. I don't like that.
It's very strange, right? More information is expected at I.O. in late June, which would be interesting. But yeah, Rithvik brings an interesting point. Why would LG want to make this device?
I think there is. I think there is a market for standalone smartwatches. It may not exist now. It could develop, but it's.
But I don't think like you would position it this way. Maybe there'll be two versions or something like that.
That's what I would hope. Yeah. I don't think that everyone's going to want the watch that has, it's consuming battery power constantly as it's trying to maintain the cellular signal, that has an extra data plan you have to pay for.
Right. Yeah.
You definitely want to have the option for just a tethered.
I'm still holding on to the dream of like smartwatches as the new dumb phones. I think that would be so cool. Just to have everyone. I mean, maybe if you think that everyone is going to be on a smartphone of some form in the future, I'm not prepared to call you wrong. But I do think that there are going to be some people out there who still, just want voice and SMS, and that's about it. Like, it's kind of a tiny segment. But
I've been looking through some of my old electronic gaming monthlies from the mid-'90s, because that's what I like to read in my spare time, is 20-year-old magazines.
Yeah.
And I saw some AT&T, there was a CES spread, and AT&T had this, it's not a smartwatch, it's a watch phone. And it wasn't even cellular. You just had to hook it up to, it's like a cordless phone for your home. But it had it flipped out. Like it opened up. So it kind of looked like a flip phone. Then you hold it up to the side of your head. I want to see that. It's asking to get broken. I want to see
that too. Can you please snap a shot of that and send it to me? Because
absolutely.
Taylor's preparing a throwback piece that would be nice for.
Perfect.
All right, so we're going to learn more about the G-Watch as time goes on. I think we got to just move on here. Finally, to tie up the Android category, even though this is sort of cross-platform, but I think we're going to see it a lot in Android if it becomes adopted. Oh, boy. Wireless charging, guys.
Oh, this guy.
Listen,
new Broadcom chip.
Listen, this is so exciting to me, and it's exciting to me for exactly this damn reason. I'm at the ASUS PadFone event. I'm talking to AT&T. I'm having a great time. They say, hey, the PadFone smartphone component can also charge wirelessly. I'm like, great. Is that Qi? And they're like, I actually don't know. I got to go check on that. And I checked on it, and no. It's the stupid Power
AT&T,
Matters Alliance. That damn...
Of course.
Because they're backing that standard. And so, of course, all the Qi stuff that I have in my house doesn't work with the damn PadFone, and that's stupid. And it's the worst damn thing ever. I mean, I have yet to go to the Starbucks and find out if this works on their stupid pads that nobody uses because it's the wrong standard, because it's not being pushed. I hate the whole thing. So how could this Broadcom device solve those problems, Stephen?
Because the Broadcom chip don't care if you're Qi, if you're Power, whatever. So there are basically three competitors right now trying to determine the standard here. And like you said, if you don't have the right phone and the right charger that match up, you can't do anything. So what Broadcom's trying to do is eliminate that incompatibility by, on the phone side of things, making a power chip that can handle any of these three different charging standards. You can put it on a Qi charger. You can put it it doesn't matter what's at Starbucks. You just drop it and you know it's going to work.
Because it's like, yeah, if it's a wireless charger, it'll work. This reminds me of a lot of the system, when system on a chips were coming out that included radios for like GSM and CDMA. Or, the big ones that were like GSM or TDMA and HSPA when AT&T was doing a switchover. Like, I remember reading about these SoCs that had both radios in them. I'm like, oh, wow, great. That's cool. Now it can be one phone across carriers, and that's eventually what we did.
Yeah, my only concern was that, I read this and I'm immediately worrying, well, is this going to be a case where, yes, the chip supports all these different standards, but like with smartphones with the radios and band support, where even if the chip might support, 20 different LTE bands, the phone actually doesn't, because the antenna is only engineered to be optimized for 2 or 3. So are we going to see things where like they need different size coils or something? And I haven't gotten a hard answer, but reading through the press release, I don't get the impression that will be a problem. I think that this chip can handle these different standards with enough grace that the hardware external to the chip isn't going to queer the deal.
That's interesting. That's a good point, because it's not just the chip, it's the antenna, and that's, we're dealing with physics there. Like some coils are sized for specific pads and stuff like that, and it's like, well, it's induction versus what's the other
resonance.
Yeah. So that's going to be interesting. So what you're saying is that it is not guaranteed that this is going to be a panacea for our woes, those of us who love wireless charging.
Possibly not, but this is definitely the best thing that wireless charging has had come around for it in a long while. And I mean, even not just the broad compatibility aside, if this was just Qi or just AT&T's thing, it still sounds like a very good chip. It has all these, high efficiency, speed, this boost mode. It sounds like it's solid
right.
in and of itself.
Yeah, because that's been a giant complaint of wireless charging, is that it is slower.
It take too long.
Yeah. I'm looking forward, by the way, to the comments on this. Who says, "Why do I need wireless charging? Why do I need smartwatches?
You don't.
Why do I need anything fun?" Hey, if all that's true, then this thing deserves a far sexier name than BCM 593050 or whatever.
It rolls off the tongue. What are you talking about?
I look forward to seeing that in some smartphones. Let's see if we can power through the iOS and Windows segments and find out what's going on here. iOS.
Speaking of wireless charging.
Yeah. So that's a nice little bridge there. What is the story here? Apple might be selecting a partner for wireless charging. Specifically, we're thinking for the iWatch, which makes a lot of sense. We've talked before about how you probably want to wirelessly charge a watch because it's a nice bedside table piece of accoutrement, and also it eliminates the need for ports.
Yes, this is true. And I think with Motorola, we might be getting a wireless charging thing with the Moto 360. I think LG might have. Did they allude to that? No, that was battery they were talking about, because the G Watch has those pads on the back. But yeah, now we're talking about the iWatch. If Apple really is getting someone to manufacture the coils, this external stuff we were just talking about, the Broadcom chip for the iWatch, then that very well may just put on this bedside pedestal like you mentioned. Oh, I think it's interesting that you talked about that, because we had another development with smartphone charging that came up this week. I don't know if it's in the rundown, but this new Samsung thing with what's it called, the SIM band.
Oh yeah, their health platform.
And this is still an early phase of this, and the hardware doesn't sound very exciting. It's just like a reference platform. But the one thing that really stuck in my mind was that Samsung wants you to wear this thing 24 hours a day, so you don't take it off to charge it.
Get out of my face. What are they going to do? Directed wireless charging?
No. I may be understanding this wrong. I didn't watch the whole presentation, but they talked about this shuttle battery, which sounds like a battery that you charge in like a normal wall charger. You plug it in, and then you take this thing, and it's wireless. You unplug it from the charger, and then you attach it to the watch, and it sort of clips on with magnets. And so it's like a shuttle. It sort of relays the charge from the wall charger to the watch by means of a separate external battery.
Whoa, interesting.
It's a little complicated, but and the idea then you would leave that on overnight and wear the watch as you sleep, and it would monitor your blood pressure and all that stuff all night long.
It's like a drill battery.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. At least you don't have to plug into a Borg alcove to charge up with it. Wear it all the time.
Oh, give it time.
Well, I think, all of this points to exciting developments, at least in the wireless charging space, and finally leveraging the technology for the purposes, for reasonable, logical purposes. As much as I love wireless charging on a smartphone, I agree that not everyone is going to see the utility in it, not everyone needs it, but for a watch where you want to minimize ports, it's a great idea. For a wearable that ostensibly some people will wear 24 hours a day, having some evolution of wireless charging for long distance charging, which we've seen bandied about for ages. By the way, the S4 was rumored to have.
Oh right, it would charge from 3 miles away. Yeah,
these Tesla technologies. Anyway, I think it's exciting to see so much buzz about this, and I think we're on the verge of a sort of resurrection of wireless charging yet again. Or who knows what the C state will be after this next swell.
I really want to put a wireless charger in my car. I saw WP Central was talking about a deal where AT&T was offloading the old Nokia wireless chargers for like $5 a pop.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, they were only in stores and very limited availability. The closest one to me was like 20 miles away, so I didn't end up getting one. And I hear that they're awful. You need to be super precisely positioned to work.
I'm looking at one right now. I'm holding it in my hand.
Yeah.
I got very excited, and then I was like, oh, right, but it's the Nokia one.
But it's the Nokia one.
It's not the Nexus 4 Puck or the Touchstone from Palm. Like, it's not ugly. It's just this plate. But yeah, you do have to be very precise, and there are no magnets or anything. That's the thing. That's what should be built into these standards. There's a mounting paradigm that makes sense, that makes it enjoyable to use. Because that's the one thing all this is missing. Like on the Nexus 4 Puck, it's like, oh, there's a layer of rubber that sticks to the phone. Mm-hmm. The Nokia thing is just hard plastic. The phone slides everywhere. Like, that sucks. The only people I've seen do it really well are Tilt with their angled cradle that works nicely. But
anyway, I can't remember what the Nexus 5 charger looks like off the top of my head. Because that got its own special one, didn't it?
I don't know if it did. I thought it was the same orb.
I think it was a more angular one that came out. I don't know.
Maybe, but the orb was a good idea. It just needs magnets, but magnets mess everything up.
I think Google took all the old Nexus Qs and just cut them in half. And
yeah. Oh, the Q.
Poor thing.
Apple goes official with the Beats deal. We talked
finally
death the other day. But yeah, it's so funny because I was just listening to another podcast that was discussing the possibilities here, and we seemed, a lot of people were on the fence. We're like, hey, is this actually going to happen or not? And it's happening. $3 billion for Apple to buy Beats. Do you think, Stephen, that they did this because they're not certain about the future of iTunes, because iTunes is like not even a contender in the streaming space? Or do you think they did it for, some combination of that and other stuff? What do you think is the way I should have phrased that question?
About we're just feeding me the answers? Yeah. No, it's got to be a combination. But I hadn't really considered so much the decline of iTunes, but I think you do have a point. I mean, just in general, smartphone users seem to be, and I have some heated opinions about this, but moving away from ownership to subscription services.
Renting your music, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we see more and more of these subscription things arriving, and no one's making a new store where you buy music. Beats, it's growing fast. It doesn't have a ton of subscribers. I think I heard 250,000 mentioned in one of the reports coming alongside the announcement here. But it's a growth market, and Beats has that brand recognition that's of paramount importance.
That is another thing that I just can't help but think about. I mean, we all kind of poo-poo Beats because it does really ruin audio if you're an audiophile. Yeah. Personally, I tend to like its effects when I need a little more volume. Everybody knows that. I've said it a billion times. But really the important thing is that outside tech circles, I think that Beats is so damn recognizable that is going to be it's going to be a very visible addition to Apple's music offering, because I think the iPod, the sort of luster of the company that built the iPod, is starting to fade a little bit.
It used to be that you wanted those lily white iPod headphones, those are the chic things to get, and now we have Jimmy Iovine. I don't know if I'm pronouncing
Iovine, yeah.
Iovine. Slamming them. He was talking he was right next to one of these Apple guys saying, "Oh yeah, the Apple headphones suck."
Yeah.
How far we've come.
Indeed, I know, and. It always reminds me of one of the best pieces of advertising I've seen, which is a sign that lives outside a local headphone shop, a stereo shop, that says, "They're free for a reason." And it has a picture of these earbuds. And I'm like, yeah, that's a solid point. But, this brand is not hated in the real world. I think it's recognized, and I think I think Beats has done a good job of convincing people that its hardware is superior. And even if it's not true, it's a status symbol, like the iPod was, like those white wires were. That's the new Beats. Like, you get Beats if you want people to understand that you have money to throw away on headphones. Like, that's important. So
you buy Beats if you want to have headphones that are pretty rather than sounding better.
Sure. Oh. But, I'm fine with that. Like, I mean, I buy smartphones for pretty. That reason. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I get it.
I don't deny it.
I understand. Be shallow. That's cool. It's just interesting that Apple found a combination of factors, such as perhaps buttressing its streaming music offerings, perhaps enhancing its audio hardware, and perhaps brand awareness and the desire to be hip again or be more hip. And it found that all that worth $3 billion. and Dr. Dre sitting on your board. What?
That's worth it right there.
Yeah, I actually don't know if that's part of the deal or not, but I assumed it was. I mean,
from one of the I don't know if it was the press announcement or Tim Cook's letter, but it did give the impression that the Beats leadership was coming on board to Apple in some form or another.
Jesus, I mean, I don't know, man. Like I have a lot of respect for Dr. Dre's professional accomplishments, but I can never get over the fact that dude beat up a woman, severely beat a woman. And everyone knows this, but everyone has, decided to forget it because whatever, he's Dre. Okay. I don't know. Anyway.
More importantly, though, this purchase gave us the opportunity to see one of the best brand tweets I've ever seen. Whereas Denny's sent out the tweet, breaking, Denny's buys Beats for $3 billion, makes huge salad.
Oh,
God bless you, Denny's.
Nice. BEE.
Womp womp.
All right, let's take us home here. What's happening with WWDC? Just tell us when we can expect it, Stephen, and where we can watch that ish.
Yeah, Apple will be, so not all of us can afford to attend WWDC in beautiful San Francisco. So starting very, very soon, WWDC kicks off next week on Monday, June 2nd. And Apple's going to be streaming the thing for all of us at home to watch. So if you've got a computer, you have a lot of good options here. Macs won't have any problem accessing this. And if you're on Windows, you just install QuickTime. You'll be able to watch it. Only problem is we don't have quite the same compatibility on the smartphone side of things. So sorry, those of you, mobile junkies who have made the switch to your smartphone doing all the work for you. You'll just have to rely on us to tell you what happened at WWDC and any interesting announcements that come out of it.
Yeah, I think we have an editorial roundtable scheduled if the news that comes out of it is compelling enough, so don't worry. Those of you in the comments who called on us to have more live hangouts. Certainly we would like to. It's just very difficult to get everyone together.
We busy.
Yeah, we busy folks. And speaking of which, we got to go. So anyway, we're going to be covering that. Stay tuned for that. Let's jump into Windows very quick. We'll sound the bong bong. There it is. OB Mobile to launch first Windows Phone. This was one of the kind of wave of new manufacturers that Microsoft...
Flood is more like it.
Yeah, that they called out and said, hey, we're going to have all these guys building Windows phones. Isn't that cool? And we're like, yeah, that is pretty cool to have more OEMs, especially for emerging markets. This one is particularly interesting because it's OB Mobile. It is run by John Sculley, who formerly was most famous for firing Steve Jobs from Apple a few decades ago. So... I'm not calling that out so that we can pile on the guy for using our retrospect to be like, oh, you're an idiot.
Hindsight's 20/20.
Exactly. No, it's not that at all. It's just I find it interesting that this company that he is, I don't know the founder of, and I don't know if he's a founding member of or whatever. He's not the CEO.
And I can't imagine he has much direct input to the phone design or anything. Just that he's involved with this is going to get people paying attention.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, it's just always interesting to see somebody from one company, then move into a situation where he's now working for a competitor or having formed a competitor. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting header image with CEO AJ Sharma standing there with what looks like a Galaxy S5, but maybe
it doesn't. No, that's fine. Doesn't have
the 4
heart rate. Yeah.
Yeah, and then presumably this new device next. I don't know what's going on in this header image. It's just interesting that a Windows Phone is coming from the guy who fired Steve Jobs. I thought it was worth a mention. LOL. But also, in a broader sense, I think it's going to be pretty cool to see whether Microsoft is successful at fostering this Android-like ecosystem at the low end.
Yeah, if these are just going to be the throwaway, not Nokia devices, or if any of them are going to get good reputations for themselves, that people are going to actively seek these out. I mean, not in all markets certainly, but are these going to be possibly more appealing than some of the higher end but correspondingly more expensive options?
It's a good point. It's a good question, and I think they're going to outperform all or most of the Android devices at their price point. So, not that I know anything about the price point, but if you're doing emerging markets, you definitely want to
make some assumptions.
Yeah, exactly. So, Windows Phone has always been really good at performing on very shoestring hardware. So, I think that's going to be interesting to see. And I'm actually looking forward to more Windows Phone news as we go on. We're kind of now at the tail end of the big old blast, the pre-acquisition blast of products from Nokia, and now we're in the lull as Microsoft Mobile gets going. When do we know, by the way, when they're going to brand themselves? Didn't they announce that? Didn't they say a couple months or something?
I don't know. I've stopped referring to the company making the phones in general when I'm talking about these guys. I just talk about the Lumias. I don't know if it's going to be Nokia, Microsoft Mobile. I'm just keeping my mouth shut till we know something for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's a good idea. And I think you and I should both shut our mouths, because I think we should take this podcast home and put it to bed. What do you think?
Wrap this baby up.
Yeah, let's do it. I was going to make a point. Oh, yeah. We're at episode 098, folks, if you didn't notice. And if you stuck with us this long, I do appreciate it. In 2 weeks, we will have episode 100. And although he doesn't know it yet, Anton Dinoj is going to be on that one. And so is, exciting news, Brandon Miniman. He's going to come back for a second, former editor-in-chief of Pocketnow and founding member. He's going to come back and riff on mobile with us. It's going to be kind of a send-off to the existing Pocketnow Weekly. Do not worry, we're not putting the podcast out to pasture, but it will continue to posture. We're going to just make some changes. We're going to make it a little more exciting. We're going to introduce a live component. We're just going to shake things up a little bit because, it's been 100 episodes. That's right. We like our format, but we're going to change it up. We got to keep with the times a little bit. So if you have something you want to see in particular in our new format, please shoot us an email. Until then, it has been... I don't know how to finish that sentence. Just wait and see. It's going to be fun. Blah, 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 blah. Folks, if you are wondering about our transition music, it comes from Ali Spagnola, who we interviewed last week on what it's like to make your music into ringtones. It was awesome. She is wonderful. It is great stuff. Listen to it. Ali Spagnola. She is at alispagnola.com. Her YouTube page is at Ali Spags, youtube.com/Ali Spags. She's hilarious. She's a pleasure. More importantly, her music is outstanding. Maybe less importantly, depending on what you know. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Equally important.
Yes, equally importantly. Go listen to her stuff. She's great. That is going to do it for this episode, 098 of the Pocketnow Weekly. Send us listener mail, folks. We have some in the box, but it's less than usual. Send us some more. We'll read it next time. Thank you for all of it every week. Be sure to find us on Twitter. Stephen is at Stephen Schenk. Our guest...
I tweeted yesterday.
You tweeted again? Well, Stephen tweets about once every 4 months, so you enjoy that.
That's literally true.
It is. And Daniel Bader is at Journeydan. Journeyman, except with a D. LOL. As always, I'm at Captain Two Phones, Captain the number 2 phones. You can also follow Pocketnow officially. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Google+. If there's a social network, we're on it, including Flipboard. Awesome.
And Pinterest.
And Pinterest. Oh, I didn't know that. Are we? No, we're not.
But you said all.
Well, I mean, almost everyone. Our audience is 96% men, so I don't know about
We're on Orchid.
iTunes, Xbox Music, Stitcher, wherever else podcasts are heard. Usually you can leave a review. If you would do that for us, folks, that would be great. Also, we're on Stitcher, as I just mentioned, and you know what? Not a lot of people listen to us on Stitcher, I just found out.
What's up with that?
We were trying to set up a promotional thing, and Stitcher was like, yeah, 500 people listen to you every week on Stitcher. I'm like, what? It's like 1/50th of our listenership or something. I don't know math. I don't know how that works. Anyway, listen to us on Stitcher. It's fun. As always, thank you so much for listening. Stephen, thank you for sticking around for this stupid long outro. Everyone, we will see you for more Mobile Tech Talk next week.
The shame that it hasn't become the platinum hit it deserves to be.
Don't be tardy for the party.
We crossed streams once, but we don't want to talk about that.
I was going to say, that's dangerous. That's just barely legal here.
Where? In Massachusetts? Everything's legal in Massachusetts.
More like Taxachusetts, am I right?
Whoa!
Hey now.
Thanks, Obama.
Do you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great, man.
Oh, well, you're so kind.
How we'll gracefully escort you off the air, and then Stephen and I will just hang around and BS.
Yeah, I have other things to do, too.
No way, bro. Only guests get their time respected. There's a lot to see on that. I think until we know more. Ugh, my goodness. Coffee burp. Sorry.